it's a little bit frustrating the way they've implemented that on this controller. Welcome back to another episode of Tech Tuesday. In this episode, we are taking a look at one of the most revered DJ controllers out on the market today, and we're going to find out whether or not the hype is real. Today, we are reviewing the Hercules Impulse 500 DJ controller. So the Impulse 500 is jam-packed with a ton of professional features that you traditionally don't find in controllers at this price point. This controller comes in at only $300 and it's got a ton of awesome features that I love. This controller features nice large jog wheels that are precise and feel great in the hand, 16 RGB performance pads, as well as crossfader curve adjustment built in to the controller, no software needed. Additionally, it has auxiliary inputs, not one but two, RCA and 1/8 inch jack. It's also jam-packed with a ton of gimmicky features that some of you guys may not use. However, if you are a beginner DJ, these features will tremendously help you in your DJ journey. This controller can also be used by multiple different platforms. It can be used by Hercules' proprietary DJUCED software, as well as Serato DJ Lite, DJ Pro, and Virtual DJ, making it one of the most versatile DJ controllers out on the market today. So let's take a closer look and see what the Impulse 500 is all about. Upon receiving and unboxing your unit, you'll be greeted with the usual stuff, an instruction manual, as well as a braided USB cable. A thing to note about the Impulse 500 is that it is powered, so this USB cable will act as both data and power delivery. This controller comes equipped with two master out options, including an unbalanced 1/4 inch output as well as an RCA. Additionally, you have an input for your microphone, as well as something that I love seeing, and this is something that you're gonna love, especially if you're a mobile DJ or if you're a DJ in general. Great having auxiliary inputs, something that's usually not found on any controllers of this budget. You have an RCA in as well as an 1/8 inch jack, allowing you to use an aux cord to plug in things like your iPad media players and things of that nature, allowing you to have some redundancy or a backup just in case your computer fails. Pretty straightforward on the DJ side of things. Only thing that we need to worry about here is our headphone inputs. We of course have inputs for both an 1/8 inch and 1/4 inch. Now, before we move to the top of the controller, I want to show you the bottom, because this controller comes equipped with something that's usually not found on many controllers. It has legs allowing you to raise your controller up off the ground. This will give it a bit of elevation when you face it upright. So now let's take a look at the front of the controller, and as you guys can see, this is what it looks like when it's all booting up. Now, for the purposes of this review video, I'll be using Serato DJ Pro to demonstrate the features found on this controller. Serato DJ Pro is the software of choice that I personally use. However, do keep in mind that this controller can also be used with multiple different softwares. Now, for those of you guys who want to use DJ Lite, I recommend that you guys upgrade to Serato DJ Pro. It is going to cost you about $130, or you can upgrade to a monthly subscription one, which is kind of a bad deal. You're going to be paying $10 versus the one-shot $130, and it's yours for life. However, when you do upgrade this from DJ Lite to DJ Pro, you'll have access to a more robust software. Serato DJ Pro is miles ahead of DJ Lite, and you'll have access to a ton more features. Serato DJ Lite will hinder some of you guys, and you'll find that you'll be outgrowing it quickly. So you'll notice on the top left section, you'll have an option for vinyl, slip, or quantize mode. I personally love working in vinyl. If I go ahead and press play, By the way, to all you guys watching, I'm gonna hook you guys up with that free scratch sample. You can download it completely free by using the link at the card up above, as well as the link in the description of this video. Underneath our jog wheel, we have our looping section, in and out button, and a knob to actually adjust the size of the loop, as well as a sync button. You have your cue, play, pause button, as well as your 8 performance pads, which, like I mentioned earlier, I love the fact that they are RGB. Now, something that I will note about these pads is the fact that they're not as responsive as I would have liked. I do feel like I have to apply a ton of pressure in order for them to trigger. If I see here, as you guys can see, some of those taps, it was missing. It wasn't registering every single tap. If you go ahead and press these sharply, however, you'll have no problem. This is something that you'll get used to over time the more you DJ on this controller. It just requires a bit more pressure to trigger the button. So if I go ahead and do, then that's totally fine. However, something like I could do on a more professional system, like just tapping, doesn't really register, and this is a common issue that I found across all the 8 performance pads as well, not just the cue button. Aside from your hot cue, loop, slicer, and sampler, you can trigger secondary functions using the shift pad here. However, for my personal opinion, you'll always be using just your hot cues, slicer, and sampler. By the way, if you're not familiar with slicer, it's pretty straightforward. The way it works is essentially a loop that triggers when you press down on the pad and releases as soon as you let go, allow you to pretty much create like a nice stuttering effect. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that for you. That's pretty much it as far as slicer goes. Sampler section, otherwise known as your sound effects section, is pretty straightforward. Press on a button and it'll trigger the sound effects. By the way, you can download my complete sound effects, my booms, my bangs, my sweeps, my horns, my silences, and everything in between can be downloaded. Check out the link on the card up above, as well as the link in the description, and you'll have access to all my effects, including that, this, and my horns as well. By the way, there is no sampler volume on this controller, so you will need to set your sampler volumes on your software of choice. But do keep in mind that there is an emergency shutoff by holding down the shift. So let's say, for example, I go ahead and trigger a siren that I didn't mean to do. If I press shift and the button again, it'll automatically cancel that effect. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that one more time. Another cool feature that I want to show you guys that's really not found on any other controller, and I'm not gonna lie, it's a bit of a gimmicky one. However, it's an awesome feature to have if you're brand new to DJing and you're just learning the basics. It's found right here in our pit section. As you guys can see, there are 2 LED indicators, and the way these LED indicators work is, let's say that you have a track on deck 1 and a track on deck 2. What you'll notice if I go ahead and adjust the pitch, you'll notice that the tracks are no longer the same BPM. So these LEDs are here to show us the right way to mix between the 2 tracks. So if you want to transition from 1 to 2, you'll notice that we have to slow this track down, and vice versa. If you want to transition between 2 and 1, you'll notice that we have to speed this track up. Now, I have the exact same track loaded up, so if I go ahead and place them in the middle, you'll notice that they'll disappear like you just see right now. Moving on to the mixer section of our controller, you'll notice that the mic control section of this is a bit more of a professional grade one, because you do have highs and lows, something that's very rarely found on DJ controllers. So love the fact that they implemented that here. As previously mentioned, I love the fact that you have auxiliary inputs, and not 1 but 2 auxiliary inputs, RCA and 1/8 inch jack. You have trim controls for both deck 1 and deck 2 on top here, as well as a 3-band EQ with a LED volume indicator here on the center. Also, cool thing about the 3-band EQ is the fact that these are full kill. So if I go ahead and demonstrate that, let's cut our bass. We lost bass. Cut our mids. We just got highs. And if we cut our highs, full kill on the 3-band EQ. On the right side, you have your master control. Now, something that I will note about this controller is that I feel like it's not a very loud controller. I found myself having to crank this thing just because it doesn't deliver much output on the sound end. So if I go ahead and press play, like, that's not very loud to me. And usually when I'm, you know, right now I'm at, I would say 3 o'clock, it would seem like I should be very loud, but it doesn't seem very loud at all. Even at full volume, I just don't feel myself getting much sound out of this controller. And once I input the trim, I notice that the tracks start distorting, so I just feel like I don't get much sound. I feel like I have to boost the sound on my external mixer or on my speaker. So just something of note. Right underneath our master, you can also trigger your headphones, so that way if you want to monitor the sound coming out of your master, you go ahead and trigger this button here, and you'll notice that it does light up. The LEDs found on your cue buttons for your master or your deck 1 and 2, they're very light. I wish that these were a little bit brighter. Nothing to complain about, however, you can obviously make them out. Here in the center, we have an effects section denoted by the silver trim right here. And this is a point of contention with me. It's a cool feature to have, however, it kind of bothers me the way that they implement it. You have a low and a high pass filter. I'll go ahead and demonstrate that. Right, so that's very cool. However, you'll notice that you also have different effects. Effects 1, 2, 3, and 4. These are software-based effects. They're not dedicated effects. And at this price point, that's something that I totally understand. Let's say I trigger effect number 1, which on my Serato, it's an echo. Automatically, when I trigger effect number 1, I lose control of my filter knob. Now, this becomes my wet and dry for the echo. This means that you cannot layer effects. So you can't have a filter going and then on top of that add an echo. I found myself confused all the time because, you know, when I was mixing with this controller, I was, okay, I'm in the mix, I'm fading out, and now let's say I want to trigger an echo. If I press it, it's gonna automatically take off the filter and it's gonna go ahead and jump to echo. And based on where I had my filter, that's gonna be the intensity of my echo. So that was a bit annoying. It's something that I kept messing up when I was mixing on this controller. So I'll go ahead and show you a demo of what it sounds like. I'll go ahead and press play. Let's go ahead and trigger our echo. You'll notice nothing is coming out because I haven't implemented the wet and dry. So in order to implement this echo, I have to move the knob. That actually doesn't sound that bad. It's still going. As you guys can see, it is post fader, but it's just annoying the way that you trigger this. So if you want to have the effects, you're not triggering it with a button, you're triggering it with a knob. So just bear that in mind. This is not a single press effect. It's a two-step effect. The faders feel good in hand. There is a bit of tension on the channel faders, which I personally like. And then you have our crossfader, nice and loose. This is perfect if you want to do a little bit of scratching. You can definitely achieve that with this crossfader here. Honestly, I have no gripes here. I love the fact that they've implemented a crossfader curve. Again, something that's usually only found on higher end controllers, higher end mixers. They've implemented that here. And the last and final point I want to talk to you guys about on this controller is the build. The build quality on this is honestly outstanding. It's a metal build controller. Faders, the knobs, they all feel super premium in hand. They don't feel like a cheap controller. I love the implementation of the RGB pads. Love the LED indicators that help you mix. This is an awesome unit at only $300 bucks. All right, so let's talk about the pros and cons of this controller, the things that I liked and the things that I didn't like, so that hopefully you guys can make an educated decision on whether or not this controller is right for you. Let's start with the cons, the things things that I really kind of didn't like. The first one being the biggest gripe that I personally had with this controller was the effects section. It kind of bothered me that it overrid the effects when you wanted to use the software-based effects. Additionally, your headphone cue LED indicators I found to be tremendously dull. I wish they would have been a little bit brighter, which brings me to the gimmick side of things. I wish that instead of having LEDs on the bottom of the unit, I wish that they would have just flat out just gave us better LEDs for our cue buttons for headphones and maybe the RGB pads, just because they are a little dull to the eye. It's no problem when you're in dark situations. However, I wish that they would have been brighter. And speaking of the LEDs on the bottom, this is one of those gimmicky features that a lot of people are not necessarily going to care much for. It's very cool that you can raise this off the ground by raising the legs, and then you have those LEDs on the bottom, which gives it a cool look, but it's not necessarily anything that's essential. And I like that you can raise this up, but most of us are going to be having this thing in a case, which will allow us to place it up a little bit higher. But aside from that, everything else really does make this controller an absolute beast. I love the fact that you can pretty much use it with any software out on the market today. Being that I am a mobile DJ, I can't tell you how awesome it is to see things like an auxiliary inputs, and not one but two auxiliary inputs. Additionally, I love the build of this controller. This does not feel like a toy in hand. It feels like a robust unit that's ready for the road. I love the metal plating. It's a solid, robust unit, but my opinion doesn't really matter. I've said this before a million times here on the channel. The only opinion that actually matters is yours. So bros, I'd love to get any opinions that you guys have, good or bad, on this controller down in those comments below. Thank you so much to my friends over at Hercules for sending this controller over for review. I have a true soft spot for Hercules because I myself actually learned how to DJ on a Hercules controller. So I love those guys over at Hercules. Thank you guys so much for sending this controller, this unit over for review. If you enjoyed this video, bros, please be sure to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new around here, and don't forget to turn on that bell so that you can be notified next time we do another Tech Tuesday video. Let me know what other controllers you'd like me to review down in those comments. Signing off, DJ Bar. Stay awesome, bros. Peace. Bye.